Okay, so folks, this is going to be my next patch. This is the Truchet pattern, as you can see. So I've added a couple things. You have, the bead that we were playing around with, yes, last night, of course. But I also added in a curve line, which will allow you to adjust the way in which the lines are touching. So I thought that was kind of an interesting kind of play on things. So kind of give them different angles, and I thought that could be interesting visually. You also have the option to add in opacity and different colors. So right at this moment, we're playing with this color here. We should be able to manage or change the color. I need to change my opacity around. I just realized that my opacity is on the wrong set. But I also put in a second set that is independent from the other. So we could have this one scrolling this way and the round circles versus the squares, for instance. And you could change the angle so that it's going down. And so now you have these really interesting patterns. I thought this was visually interesting. I thought this is a good way to play around with it. You also have the option to change the mix mode so that how they interact with each other. So if I do like overlay and I change the thickness, we'll just bump up the thickness on the back side. And then we're gonna do that is the opacity. That should be the opacity of the back side. So we're gonna have to play with the opacity of the front side, which should be this one here. And so as we get thinner, and we could do the thickness bigger on the other one. We'll do the thickness bigger here. And so they're starting to intermingle here, which is pretty interesting. It's set to 50% overlay. We could do like, a darken. We could do a difference, right? So now you have this kind of like mixing together. We could change them to opposite colors, do green and another green. We'll do dark greens. Right, and so now you get this kind of interesting interlay. So I thought this was kind of visually interesting. I think it's coming along nicely. Of course, you could do audio reactivity on both. You could have just one, or you could have one thinner than the other, so that it doesn't stand out as much. There's no end to this circus. You just have to decide what you want to do with it. And so I leave that to you guys to decide. Right at this moment, the background, the color one, color two is just it's a noise in the background. I think I'm going to play around with that a little bit more. I like the pattern it makes. I like the texture that it adds to it. I just need to think that through and just decide whether or not I want to do that or if I just want to do something different. Like right now, you could just set them both to white, and now it's all one color. So we'll change the thickness or the opacity back to 0. Not that one. Opacity back to 0 on the other. Is it opacity 2? Not that one. The other opacity. Opacity 1. So I need to change those around. But you get the idea. I think that this is a good start. I really like the pattern curve option. I think that's a nice little neat little trick, so that you can have edges that are more flat and square, or edges that are circle, or both. You can have circles and squares, right? So that's pretty interesting. And then this just makes a perfect square, right? So then you could just offset it just ever so slightly. And so now you have these offsets. You still also have the trigger. So if I hit the beat trigger, it's going to change the trebuchet pattern randomly, right? And that also works for the other. So if I turn back on the other lines, and I hit the trigger button, it'll change both opacities on both set, or not opacities, the randomness. So that's where I'm at right at this moment. And you can also, like I said, you could have round circles on one and squares on the other, and the beat trigger will randomly change on both. You have the options to change this. You could do like hard light, or you could do overlay. Would be visually interesting. I think if you had it set up a certain way, I think that could be visually interesting. So some things to play around with. I think it's because my opacities are not quite where they need to be. So like that one needs to be like that. And the opacity here needs to be dialed down just a little bit. And so then we could play around with that and get some, visual interest in mixing of the two. So I think overall I'm starting to like it. I think there's just a few things I'd like to change. But yeah, good stuff. Tell me what you think. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Questions, comments, complaints, concerns, please, anytime. Send me an email. My email address is jacobmesick, MESICK, @gmail.com. I look forward to your emails, and I appreciate all that you do in supporting what it is that I do. And without you guys, there would be no me. So I appreciate y'all. Have a great night, and talk to you later.